Hi, Brooke. How
Hi,
are you?
Shannon. I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I am fueled up on a lot of coffee today. Uh, not a
Oh,
lot of sleep last night, but you know the feeling.
oh yeah. I mean, permanent mom tired. It's a thing.
Oh,
You just you just keep going.
yeah, but I think we have it better in California because we can get a little bit of like a suntan, and that makes you look a little bit more awake.
Yeah.
That's my
You do.
theory.
Yeah, right. We get that glow.
Um, everybody here today, Brooke and I have known each other many, many years, and through many lives as career professionals, as moms, as friends. But I'd love to introduce you guys to Brooke herself. Brooke Lawler. Tell everybody about you, just like a quick bio of who you are and what you're here to chat about today.
Yeah, well, I think it's good to just kind of explain how we met. So
Mhm.
Shannon and I go back a few years ago. Gosh, it could even be longer now. From the corporate advertising world, and that's really where I got my professional start was in advertising. Straight out of college, I went into that field, worked my way up from the real bottom feeder positions all the way to, the head of marketing role at my last agency. And Shannon and I overlapped there at the last agency we were at, both on She was in strategy, I was in accounts, and I really loved all of my advertising experience because it isn't like a job in accounting where all you do is accounting. When you work in advertising, you get to touch a million different businesses, you get to wear a million different hats. So I feel like it prepared me better than any career for an entrepreneurial path. There's so much experience I still draw from today from that, 13-year career in advertising. And yeah, so that was where I got my start. And then a few years ago, coming up on 3 years ago, we made a big shift individually and as a family. And we're still in that. The journey is still unfolding into on more entrepreneurial path. So
Awesome. I
that's a bit of my background.
can't wait to dive into it more. I have a zillion questions for you about everything you've been doing and shifting as of late. But it's so funny because I agree with that too about advertising prepares you to take on the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's you were thrown into, especially when you're at the bottom feeder level, you were thrown into so much like cold turkey, like here, go and pitch the CEO on something or go fly to New York for this meeting. And you just know how to do things so quickly. And the learning curve could be great, but you're just like, I can handle it. I can take on anything. But it's also hard to walk away from that too, because there's so much opportunity as you grow and go up the ladder. But how did you kind of like take that step back and be like, this isn't for me anymore?
It's really a good point you make about how it's scary to step away from advertising because it's a very attractive industry. There's so much opportunity for upward movement. The culture is great. The people we work with are great. And I always say now, be careful at what you're good at because it may not be what you're meant to do. And
Mm.
advertising was something I was good at, but it wasn't. I always knew that little voice there that you kind of quiet. It's not your life calling. It comes with really amazing opportunities, good pay eventually, as you work your way up. Um, but yeah, when I got to a certain level, right, when you kind of get to the top and you peek into the C-suite and you get to sit at the table with the board, and I had opportunities like that, and you're like, I guess I was disappointed. Like this is it. And as a lifelong like learner, a real growth mindset, growth hacker person, I want to be around the most stimulating, exciting, inspiring people. And I just saw more of that in the entrepreneurial space. So I started to get, I guess, disenchanted with what the top looked like. And it got to the point where I was always ideating new businesses, we were even trying to make change inside the agency world. You remember we were working on like a better
Mhm.
parental leave policy. And it
Yeah.
was those things that it felt like, I've described this before in a previous newsletter, like a tugboat just trying to turn around a cruise ship. And I just thought, you know what? This isn't mine to change. I get to do these things that I want to do when I have my own private company. And so then the moment for me was when I realized it was scarier not to make the change
Mhm.
than it was to do the change. When I thought, and this sounds grotesque, but when I get on my deathbed one day and I look back,
Mhm.
if I'm a CEO of an advertising agency, is that going to be fulfilling if I own my own agency? And the answer was no.
Mhm.
So there we kind of started over. At the time, I had a side business already, and as a wine consultant, and it was just fun. It's just been fun, but it wasn't really what I thought I would grow into a full on business. But we sold our home. We moved into a little tiny house on a friend's land, and we had a whole other startup that, because of 2020 and many twists and turns, we didn't end up pursuing. As such goes the entrepreneurial path. Um, but it's okay, because if I knew now, like if I knew when we made that decision 3 years ago where we would be today, I
Mhm.
probably would have not done it. I would have been like, oh, that didn't all pan out so easily. Yet today I stand here and I still go, I'm glad I did it. I'm
Mhm.
glad we're doing this. I'm glad we're trying to design our life in a new way.
Right. And
Apologies for the dog.
oh gosh, please. This is life. Um, it's interesting you see that too of like we never know what the future is going to be like, and if we know something would not work out, would we ever take that leap? Probably not. But I always look back at one of my favorite people and favorite bosses, and she had two kids and she was traveling nonstop, working in advertising, and you could just see that she was never happy. And I looked at her and was like, I don't want your life. I don't want it. And I know when we worked together, you were commuting on the train for hours a day. And that was taking away from your family, probably any personal time you had to like take care of yourself in any way. And then
Mm-hmm.
you roll up to a job where you're sitting at the table, but there's just no like electric charge there. You know, you had to do something else, regardless if it worked or not. Like you can't live life that way, although so many people do because they think they have to.
Yeah, it's not sustainable, that for lack of a better term, that rat race.
Hmm.
And in some ways it was rechargeable because I got a nap on the train every day. Can you imagine, right? When if you get to wake up and like go get a nap in the morning, and there was nannies and there was support and all that. And then in other ways it was, yeah, you're burning the candle at both ends. And really got to the point where I was so tired of being the mom at the park on Saturday that nobody knew.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's not to say I want my whole identity as this like stay at home mom. Like that is not fulfilling for me. I like hybrids. I'm a huge hybrid person.
Yeah.
But I was like, gosh, I really want to know more people in my own community. And that must have been some subconscious intention, because now I sit here in a business that is that lives off of a network. And then that phrase of your network is your net worth could not be more true. Being more plugged in, knowing my community, like having more local mom friends, just being more entrenched in this area where I live. It's been the biggest paycheck from the life shift.
Hmm.
And, it's not to say I'm here like monetizing people. I mean,
Oh.
paycheck in just the way you feel, and the it takes a village mentality that comes forward when you invest in humans.
Hmm.
So that's been the biggest payoff of the life switch.
Yeah. You know what's interesting too? It's a lot of people have talked about like the blue zones around the world where people live to 100 and they attributed it for so long to diet. And okay,
Mhm.
these potatoes are only grown in this remote island in Japan, and that's why they live so long. But the studies they've done further and further, it's all about the community and how dialed in these people are to their community. That's what actually makes them
Mhm.
live longer, keep their brains healthy, their hearts healthy, because it's all about being there for those around them. And it sounds like
Mhm.
you're creating that space for you, and it's making you guys happy.
It is. It's the biggest thing is community. I think we're coming out of like one of the heaviest isolation periods, well, that I've known in my lifetime. And that created some like, dark days, some gloomy days in the mind for sure. Um, so like there's nothing more important than like building community and intentionally finding good family friends for
Yeah.
us, for the whole family.
Hmm.
That's a big priority. But yeah, I guess the biggest benefit from the shift from corporate to entrepreneurial
Hmm.
is just that time freedom. I think when you
Hmm.
unpack everything, we're all pursuing that. Like some people say financial freedom or whatever it is, but at the bottom of it all, we're all pursuing, like, I get to decide what my day looks like. I don't want to wake up with an alarm clock. I don't ever want to wake up with an alarm clock. I'm sure there'll be exceptions, but I always want to wake up with the sun and go to bed when I'm tired.
Yeah.
And sure, there's timestamps for certain meetings and meals when you're hungry, but I'm loving not having this like packed calendar
Hmm.
of events that you have to do when you're in advertising. You have to sit there and like just like master your day and jam more in and find pockets. And when you live like that, you're living in a permanent state of like stress, whether you're aware of it or not. You get good at it,
Hmm.
but it's a constant little cortisol rush. And that's speaking back to the blue zone idea. People in those areas also have slower lives.
Yeah.
They have, they're in community, they have slower lives, they make scratch food together.
Yeah, they eat
Everything,
meals together.
yeah, they slowly exist. They're more mindful and intentional about their time. And that's really what I'm after.
Hmm. Yeah. And then when you sort of stop getting paid, like when you work in a corporate job, it's like you're getting paid for hours spent on this work.
Yeah.
But that's fine. But like there's so much more value in getting quote unquote paid to be with your kids, to have time for yourself, to like ideate a new business idea. Like that
Hmm.
paycheck is so much more fulfilling than the actual like dollar you'd be getting.
Yeah. And I'm sort of unlocking this, like there's money everywhere. Like there's ways to make money everywhere. And when you get out of the paycheck, the salary, that mindset, the employee mindset, you can start to kind of go, oh wow, like there's different ways to monetize all over and
Yeah.
hopefully get to a place of passive income that just
Yeah.
money makes money while you sleep. That's
Hmm.
that's that's the dream.
100%, 100%. And it's so funny when I was considering like, do I, shift over or full time? Do I do this? Do I take this leave? Aaron was like, come to the bright side with me. And I was like, bright side? It's kind of like the dark side because it's like, it's
Yeah.
it's unfamiliar. Is this worth the risk? And he's like, Shannon, it's the bright side because it's awesome and you get to live your life to your schedule. Um,
Hmm.
and I witnessed you do it for so long, and just to see your journey, I'm just like, she's figuring it out, and like, I'd love to watch you figure it out. Like, I mean, because it's an example for me and to so many. But I know that like there's been a couple of big changes I'd love to like talk about specifically. Like you started this wine consultant business as a side hustle, but it has grown and you have a massive like team. You have done an alternate plan for your kiddos for school. And then you guys have a whole new business venture. So there's so much to tackle. Where do you want to kind of dive into first?
Yeah. Okay. So the wine business is, like I said, it was just a side hustle, and then it got to this point where, should I build this or not? And I think I had a lot of fear about having a team and it's a direct sales business model. So you really don't have employees, but I think I had some stress that I would be managing people, and I'm like, I don't want to do that, you know.
But you're an
Um,
amazing manager. I'm just gonna throw that in. Yeah,
but
it's a gift you
it
have.
wasn't bad. It's not, yeah, it's not the same. And like it's just everybody's still an independent, and you're just there to mentor.
Yeah.
And so I found that that was okay. It wasn't the same as corporate world. They're on their own. They got to do what they need to do to make the most out of the business, and I'm just here to help guide. And so once I got over that, yes, then the team started to grow a lot. 2020 hit and everybody was drinking, and e-commerce wine businesses did very well. Ours specifically did very well. So that was a huge increase. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's do this because I can fit it around my family. I can go to wine tastings on weeknights and weekends. Like I don't have to compromise that like 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. park date time that I really enjoy with, doing with friends. So that's been huge in still having a piece of identity and professionalism that I need. Is it my life calling? No, but I know it was the conduit to everything because now, as we are really in our final startup venture with what we call Behere, co-working space meets outdoor enrichment, it's amazing to see every resource, every advisor, every solution
Hmm.
appear because of the network that I created
Right.
through the wine. And I wouldn't have had that if I stayed in advertising and I had you see the same like 12 people every
Hmm.
day in
Hmm.
advertising. And you don't know that many people when you're going to an office and you literally have walls all around you. So that those two, they work in beautiful harmony. I try to only pick things now that how does this venture support my true dream, which is to launch this community of independent workers and learners. And if it doesn't somehow fit, I got to start saying no,
Yeah.
or else it will deter the goal. The goal, it'll take longer.
Yeah. The
Uh,
past 3 years, have you kind of felt like you had to say yes to a lot?
yes, I did. They did. And I had took on some consulting and I had too much. And so I'm kind of chewing the chopping block now. And you said no to me recently, which made me think of it like when I asked if you were still doing strategy work because I had a referral for you. And I love that. Whenever I ask someone something and they say no,
Hmm.
I go, good boundary. Like I get like a rise out of being around women that can say no because it's not really where you said something like it's not really what I'm focusing on now, and I was just like, yes, okay, good, like happy with that answer. I'm not even bummed.
But probably a year and a half ago, I would have been like, how do I make this work? How do I not sleep? And how do I take this on for my friend? And I think like when you kind of know your lane, you stay in it and you're not looking at like, ooh, this like light up sign. Maybe I should turn left and go here.
Yeah, you got to get those blinders on, right? Like what the horses have in the race.
Mhm.
The- I don't know the term, but you know what
Yeah.
I'm talking about. They
Yeah.
can't see to the left or the right. You can't look
Right.
over your shoulder.
Narrow focus.
Run your race. So I don't know if I answered your question. I feel like I maybe packed in a bunch. But
No, no. This is a conversation. It's gonna flow. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, there's the theme of community just keeps rising in your life. Like you develop the wine community
Mm,
and, probably unexpectedly tapped into so many people within that organization. Farmers markets, like people just you wouldn't have encountered normally, but you're so glad you did. And they're just fueling not only your life and your family's life, but your ultimate dream and what you guys really have your mind and your heart set on. So it just, it seems like community was your calling, and you were amazing doing it in the corporate world of like bringing people together and ideas together. But like you're saying, like that in the beginning, like that was your gift from that role, and like you've taken that now into your life, and now you're building the ultimate community.
Right. Like you're right. Like how could I use those skills, but I couldn't impact as many people because
Mhm.
it was a closed, just a closed, tight circle.
Yeah.
So the you mentioned farmers markets, and I'm recalling how amazing that time was because it really pushed me out of my comfort zone. Like you're sitting
Mhm.
there talking to really complete strangers, and as good as I can be, in the pitch room and improv and extemporaneously speaking, I really am not an extrovert. I'm an like intro extrovert. I like 10 people that I already kind of know in a dinner
Mhm.
setting. Then for sure, I might ramble too long. But in like big groups or that cold setting, oh, I get so tired from it. So I had to
Mhm.
push through that, and I've met some of my best friends like from because of the farmers market. They were either there or they
Mhm.
introduced me to somebody else, right? They were maybe 1 or 2 degrees away from somebody that I was just meant to meet. And
Mhm.
that's really rewarding. I think the theme is, yeah, there's community, and then there's this like the word comfort, just breaking out of your comfort. If
Yeah.
I'm going to make this whole C alliteration here, and then just being consistent with that, like just getting out of your comfort zone, consistently doing that.
Mhm.
And now I've gotten to the place where I want to be allergic to being comfortable, like just keep pushing past like fears and pushing past comfort because there's so much gold on the other side. That's where you
Mhm.
get just so many lessons, so many blessings just when we get out of our own way.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like watching children play, and when they don't have those barriers or boundaries, they
Mhm.
have creativity and openness for everything, and like to take that and be able to live your life that way is amazing. You're trying things for the first time that probably feel like a struggle, but you're going to feel amazing afterwards, just like a kid going down the slide the first time would feel.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say bring up the kid thing because I was just talking with a woman that owns her own nature school on the East Coast, just interviewing, getting advisors on all things for our Behere business. She talked about how a lot of kids don't actually know how to play, like free play, like the way we think they do.
Yeah, yeah.
They need a little guidance, a little structure. And I thought about that a lot, how being an entrepreneur is just like this open playing field. And sometimes it's like paralyzing because no one's telling
Yeah.
you what to do. And similarly, in as a kid, depending on the educational structure you put them in, they're going to step into a classroom where everything's prescribed, or they might be at like a Waldorf school where like it's way more free play, way more open. And I learned from this educator that most people, kids are people, we're all just versions of it, different ages. They need a little bit of guidance, need a little bit of boundaries to then be wild and free.
Mhm.
And I'm like, that was it resonated so much with me. And I thought about the creative brief, bringing it back to
Yeah.
advertising,
Yeah.
how a good brief doesn't overly prescribe. It's not um, overly prescriptive or laborious and wordy and long. But if it's too bare, then everyone's looking at you with like, I don't know how to walk out of this room and succeed on this campaign.
Right.
And so I've just been like running that idea in my mind a lot lately where like that's just life. Like give yourself enough of an environment for success, enough boundaries, that sandbox to play in,
Yeah.
not too much. So that's really what the journey I'm on is how to like sit within a space of enough limitations and constraints, um, but also enough space to just create without feeling too confined. And it's tricky.
Yeah, but that's a really great analogy because I would have never really thought about that, especially from a school that, I don't know too much about different school methods or ways, but, I think nature school and I think, you know, playing playing make believe, jumping in puddle, like getting out there with nature and like feeling connected to it. But yeah, I mean, I guess to have a little bit of here's how we do this, or a little bit of instruction, or a little bit, so it's not a completely loose rope. It's not a
Yeah.
tight rope, but it's there. But that's also a great way to think about life, like how you're, taking it to heart, because you I can see so many people who even I've worked with who, if they don't receive enough direction, just sit there. There's no, it's hard enough as it is to take action on a day-to-day basis
Mhm.
without having someone sort of guide you along the way, like in your ear or a boss or something. Like, most people don't know how to take that next step, or they can take that one step and then they like don't go further. Um, which is what I do when I coach people. I help people also like stay accountable and, to move forward to get to the goal that they want, or to change the behavior that they want. Um, but if you say you have to follow this plan and you can never have a potato chip again, then people are like, whatever. But if you give them no
Yeah.
action plan, then they still are like, whatever. But it's like that happy balance you have to fall
Yeah.
in. So,
And you probably getting that a lot with coaching people that are really looking for you to tell them what to do. And you're probably just trying to unlock some clarity that's already inside them, right? I'm just putting words in
no,
your
but it
mouth.
is.
Like, you know what to do. How
Yeah.
do we find that inside of you, that conviction? Because you already know what to do. Most of the time people know, they just don't want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's like what's it? Action paralysis. Um, because yeah, like I don't want someone to be my client forever. I want to get them to where they need to go. And if we get to that point and there's other things we want to work on, great. Or there's like a big thing they want to prepare for and we work on it for a period of time, cool. But like, I don't want to work with someone for 5 years, because then I'm not doing my job effectively and they're not moving the needle on their end. They're just paying me. And that's not worth it on either side.
And I want to ask you a question on your coaching business. Your like unique special sauce is helping people make big change, right? Is that
Yeah.
what you would say?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
That are contemplating big shifts like this that we're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. It could be in a couple of areas. For me, helping especially the corporate female, because I've had so much experience, either you're emerging in your career or you've hit the top and you're like, what do I do? This is not it.
Yeah.
And also that what comes along with that, it's the burnout, it's the ordering
Mhm.
takeout all the time, it's the I don't have time to take care of myself, I got office butt. um you just like it
Office butt. That's so
office
good.
butt. Oh my gosh,
It's like a
that's
flat mom butt, but office butt. Yeah.
office
Yeah.
butt.
You're making me like want to clench my cheeks right now.
After having the twins, I like definitely like looked in the mirror in the side profile. I'm like, Erin, I've got office butt.
Yeah.
So, it's like everything that like falls apart when your career is moving forward, and how do you
Yeah.
fix that part of that too? Because, you know, there comes a point where you get confident enough in yourself and what you're doing where you're like, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do and this is how I do it. But it takes a lot of people a long time to get to that place. So,
Absolutely. And we cannot do it all. We can have it all, just not at the same time.
mhm,
And we have to get real with, we have to outsource certain things,
yeah,
right? Like there's just no way around that. There's as women who are driven and want to be as much hands-on with our kids and in our kitchen, right? Like you and I are very similar in that way, like the food we eat, being whole food, eating right. Like you cannot do all that. So you have to go, what am I willing to outsource and what is like no non-negotiable for me, like I'm hands on this, and
Yeah.
that's the dance I'm always dancing on, like
Yeah.
I'm
What
homeschooling my kids, and I'm like, is that really sustainable? How do I still, what's behind that? It's what's behind that is a custom education, like a really custom education. I don't need to be the one that does it all, so that's the goal, is like, how do we call in the village for, but to still achieve the goal.
right. Right. So then how does that kind of play into Be Here and this new model of like working and learning and living?
Yeah, so we won't have the living portion. I know I had much of that before, but we'll have the working and learning. So you think of WeWork meets YMCA, but outdoors, very open air. So we're looking to find like a land sponsor, and we don't really want to buy land, and then we'll set up open air co-working spaces, and adjacent to that, very much nature, forest, school services. And I hesitate to use the word school because I really am not responsible for anyone's education. Like our program isn't. I'm definitely not. But enrichment services, what I've found in, especially specifically where I live, um, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, there's a lot of independent workers, remote workers in this area. And there's a lot more people coming to what I like to call alternative education. It's like the term homeschooling doesn't even cut it anymore. Some people are on IEPs, some people are doing hybrid programs, some people are doing home education, but it doesn't look like the way it used to look. It's not this like perfect stay-at-home mom that sets up a classroom at her dining room table. Like it's a lot of pods and drop-offs, and there's so much, it's so different now. And either you're working from home and doing all this stuff in your home and you're living in it really hard, like those walls are screaming for you to get out, or you're driving here, you're going to an office, your husband's going to an office, you're dropping a kid off here, you're dropping there. That those are the two worlds I see. And they're neither are very sustainable. It's either you're overly busy and overly scheduled, or you're completely taxed inside your home. And so we really wanted to create a space where people could go
Yeah.
to still be an adult and like use, have your deep productive flow,
Mm-hmm.
um, while you put your kid in an enrichment service. And we're going to focus more on nature-based services and the arts for now.
Mm-hmm.
As far as academic stuff, that we won't touch that for a while.
Yeah.
People can academically do what they want for their kid, whether it's, you know, traditional school and they come after, or it's homeschooling and they do it on their own. But really just supplementing and filling in the gaps where people need a little bit of help, but they still want to be together as a family a little more
Yeah.
on the same soil. Just, and then we're bringing in lunch. We're bringing in a really nutritious lunch in the middle of the day. We actually just got a great partner. They're called School of Lunch. They will be doing the lunches. They use whole foods nutrition and very ancestral type eating, and that's going to be the sponsor for our kitchen. Like that's going to be the food that the people of all ages will come together and eat this meal. And think about just lunch. If that's all we did for people that had 9 to 5s and their kids were off in programs all day, if they got to see their kids at noon for a really healthy meal, well, that would do a lot for the brains, for the productivity, for the cementing more of your family culture. So
Yeah.
we're starting there with lunch.
Amazing. Amazing. And it's forcing working people to take that break and be outside and connect with each other. Like
Yes.
that literally is a dream. I'm like
Hmm.
it's just when you can let your guard down, because I mean, a middle of the day office lunch is like, I'm gonna grab this, we'll sit in the kitchen together, we'll talk to a couple of people, but like we're gonna revert back to talking about work. Like this, you cannot do that. You were actually taking that break and being together.
Yeah. And hopefully you don't have a whole bunch of coworkers in this situation. It's
Mhm.
independent, you're an independent worker. Like for
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
you can come there and you can get some of your administrative stuff done, and your children could be off having some workshop or some lesson, depending on what was a fit for what their needs are. And you would be able to know they're near, but not be with them, say together but apart.
Yeah. Ah, that's
So
amazing.
that's the vision. It is, it's going to happen. It has to
Mhm.
happen. So many people need it. We need it. It's just always a matter of exactly when. And so we always say these things are inevitable, but traction and capital and all of that will just make things go faster or
Yeah.
slower.
But I still think consumer behavior has shifted so much in your favor for this. Like people still aren't back in offices, and many who are still kind of afraid to be there. Like
Yeah,
they want their own space. They want fresh air. They don't want too many people around. And frankly, they're sick of the office culture. Like they haven't had to do it for a couple of years and it's
yeah.
exhausting.
Yes, it's so true. Like we have so much, the timing is really good. And I see it as like a bridge from a very divisive time. It's like it brings in so many different, hopefully it serves a lot of different people and it doesn't look like, one type. Um, but yeah, I do think it will meet a need for many
Yeah.
that, and whether you're just a person that needs a place to go work and you want to see some humans, or you're like you're all in and your kids are going to be there too, and you're going to be there a full day every day of the week. It's it's customizable in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing is like when we saw each other every day, I was in the rat race of like LA preschools, and honestly, it was so stupid. Everyone was like trying to sell you on something. You're paying a fortune for these tuitions, and you have to sell yourself as a family, and it just was too much. And my husband hated it. He hated, hated, hated. He was like, "This is not us." But I was like, "This is the only option. This is it." And we've come so full circle of like all that matters is play, and like literally come home a mess, destroy your clothes, come
Mhm.
home with paint everywhere. You got purple hair in your paint. We can't get out for a week. I don't care. And the summer we were trying to send Ellis to an adventure camp, a nature camp. It just like logistically couldn't work because it was all the way out in Agora Hills, and it was like all day and like no one could pick him up from there. So we were so bummed, but like every day the whole summer was packed. I was like, can I sign up and go here? Because it was just like all these different activities outside that like at the end of the day he would come home filthy and exhausted, and like that's all that matters.
Mhm.
um and so I think just like sort of stepping away from what school is to what children actually need developmentally and socially and emotionally too
Yeah.
is so smart too, because I don't think the traditional view of school is going to be around here for too long. I think people will have a major shift.
Yep. I really am excited to see it. Like I always wanted remote working to be the thing years ago, and it was like I felt like I was the only one taking that, working from home, and to many people's, I'm sure, judgment. And then it happened, of course under circumstances we didn't want, but like it happened. That was a silver lining of everything. And then like school, it's like you if you look at the future of work, the future of education always follows it. It's a little, and right now they're a little bit um behind.
Yeah.
So that was our really big decision when it came to like education. It's like, well, Finn would have been going into kindergarten like in 2020, and that wasn't what I wanted for his kindergarten experience. So but anyways, we really looked at like, okay, we stepped away from corporate world, we stepped away from being butts and seats. So it felt inconsistent and incongruent to then say that then we want you to go do that, when we saw education a little bit behind in that. Not to say that there aren't amazing schools, amazing teachers. The hugest thing for me was the length of the day and
Yeah.
the rigor and the homework, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's it's like I'm not going to see my kid for 30 hours a week.
Mhm.
And I just didn't feel comfortable with that at this point in time. And so you just like, okay, how do we foster entrepreneurialism? How do we have more time flexibility? What if we are able to work wholly, totally remotely and we want to go be in another state or another country? What are we going to do about our kids? So just setting the foundation for that for them early on was really a huge attractive attribute in homeschooling. So we like to say that be here is embracing the future of work and the future of education, and intentionally by design, by putting the kids and the adults on the same soil. It's important. It's not just because it's convenient and saves us drive time. Your children need to see you inspired and alive and loving what you do, right? If they're only seeing you in the home, like ripping out your hair and like complaining about laundry, that doesn't look they don't want to do that when they're older, right? If they see their mom coming out of a meeting or off a call with a spark in her eyes when they're meeting for lunch, or their father, and then you similarly you see your kid running in from a session looking alive, like it's just an energy thing. It's a what do they call that in Silicon Valley? The adjacent possible, back when all the startups were starting and they were near each other and they were vibing off each other, and it's like they're just sharpening each other. I think of that for the energy and the vibe I want to be here. I want both the children and the adults to just pull inspiration from each other.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. I think it's so powerful of, you know, being that good example to not only your kids, but the other kids in the community of like, you know, loving what you do, feeling inspired by what you do. My sister-in-law is a top oncologist, and granted, it's not a career that allows her to be home as much, but she would always say when her kids were young, like they'll understand someday. They'll understand why I do this. Um, and now her kids are 15, and my niece was just in town over the weekend, and she's so proud of her mom because she gets it now. She's like, my mom was out there saving lives, and she
mhm,
does it for others. It's not for herself, it's not for glory. It is because she's so good and she loves, loves, loves what she does.
mhm.
And she is just so proud of her mom, and it's like to be able to create a space where kids can see that every day on all the adults around them. And that's just so special. It's so, so, so special.
Yeah. It's important because not everybody is going to be able to or be called to pursue entrepreneurial jobs that like we're talking about here, that are, oh, I have an online business, or I'm in real estate, or I can work wherever. Like, we quite frankly obviously need oncologists, and we need doctors, and we need people that are going to go out of the home, and their kids are going to go, where's mommy and daddy? But we need those people for society to function. And so your story just there was like just made me like, it humbled me, because I we were in the ER for Matt's thing, his throat thing the other day, and you can edit this out if you want. It's weird. But it's like I was sitting around looking at all of the medical professionals going, these people could never enjoy be here. They could never come to a co-working space and put their kid in a program, but we need them. So I'm really grateful they're here. Uh, and so yeah, that just was a sobering realization. Like, we can sit here. It's a privilege, is what I'm saying, to be able to choose to go. I'm going to go make money in a different way, and I'm going to go educate my kids in a different way. That's a huge privilege.
Right. But they could be maybe part of the audience of, hearing about this experience for kids. And as the enrichment program grows for kids, maybe it's a spot for them so they could still be a part of it. I'm trying to expand your audience too soon here.
No, 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 no. And you know what? If we're just going to spitball and like ideate, because it's always fun to do that, we actually have a doctor on our board of advisors. She's a doctor
Mm,
of physical therapy, but she has a bunch of other accreditations too. And we've talked about this, about growing the I guess the wellness side more, where a lot of parents have to go to different appointments for their kids, and eventually could there be a health hut on site where if you're a practitioner, all different kinds, just like any other gig worker, this is your space. You don't maybe go need to you don't need a hot desk with Wi-Fi, but maybe you have access to a room that's set up with all the medical things you need, and you're just renting hours there. Um, and could that really help a parent that needs to, get their kid in for a physical, or a lot of kids with special needs need special physical therapies. And so we talked a lot about that, because I have three other friends that have come to me and said, my kid with special needs would do so well here. Are you going to have anything like that? And it's like, my mind's not there, but I'm like, well, you most likely should,
Yeah.
because those are the children that there's nothing wrong with them. They learn and they exist in a different way, and they're gifted, but a lot of them need to run free, and some of
Yeah.
them need to be loud, and they just don't fit in the box.
Yeah. And I learned this from a friend of mine. And her kiddo is older, and he he actually thrives, like he goes to like a recreational school as a teen because
Mhm.
being outside is very calming for him and what he's got going on. But it's just, yeah, it's so much of what's going on in schools, especially today, especially with budget cuts and condensing classrooms and also making, I think a kindergarten classroom at our local kindergarten is 27 kids, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And one teacher. Uh,
Oh, poor
like, yeah, like how do you
yeah.
expect a kindergartner to thrive in an environment like that? So, you know, I think the conversation is starting to shift, like you're saying, it is behind, but people are looking for alternate options of like, how do we find community and education? How do we find community in this new world of work? And like, what is
Mhm.
our new world order?
Right. Yeah, just don't go it alone. Like how do we be separate but together, even as how do we work and not feel isolated? How do we provide a private education for our kids that doesn't cost an arm and a leg, like a 4-year university, but then doesn't leave them also isolated? That's really what you back to the community word that you brought up. It's true. That's really what sits behind a lot of it, is
Mhm.
bringing a village together to support one another. Um, because it just doesn't really exist. I mean, you can make your own. You can definitely go call in the help, but there aren't a whole lot of structures and systems that I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. It's not, it's dependent on who is available, not who is here for you.
Mhm.
And I say that being someone who like lives here without any family here. And it's like, it's a whole different ball game than friends whose families are here and you can call in, or you live somewhere where you know your neighbors and you're like, I need you for an hour.
Yeah.
uh you
And you
know
guys do you guys have like a good network of support? Like you have some nannies that you like.
we do, and they're amazing, but we also respect boundaries of like, where we may need help all day on a Saturday, but we're not, you already worked all week, we give you your life and your space and all that. And my mom could only fly in so much. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's still different. And we had the friends who didn't have kids who could help for a while, and now everyone seems to have have kids and they're young and like they are living their own lives and figuring it out on their own. So I think that's the tough part about, Aaron and I've always talked about like building community and how do we do that. And it seemed like it was always like, oh, when we get to school age, that's when we'll find our people, like that's it. But
Yeah.
then it took some shifts in direction for school and didn't find our people. And then plus the pandemic, like no one was out there being like, hey, how are you? And
Right.
I was the mom who wasn't able to do pick up and drop off. Like no one knew who my
Yeah.
mom was.
Right.
So, and that's like a really crappy feeling.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it's coming. You're gonna find it. You guys can come to
yes,
be here. um,
yeah, yeah,
like it's when you said the schools, like, oh, when we have a school or when it made me think about that. Like a lot of the times we mistake like a neighborhood or a school or some people go to church like as community and but they're just walls, they're just buildings with people sometimes. That's not what community is. Community is really an intentional choice to be like, okay, we're going to come together around these shared values and we're covering each other um, in these ways. And yeah, just to assume that you can move into a neighborhood you love, or you can find a school you love, or some kind of spiritual place of worship, and that you're automatically just going to have a community is, I think, a little bit of the lie. And have to intentionally craft this stuff,
yep.
just like we have to intentionally design the life that we want. It just doesn't happen.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And then I think I realized that, kind of coming out of the pandemic, because we moved to the Valley like literally March of 2020. And so we like uprooted our whole lives and moved here. And then it was like, oh, this next thing happens, or when this next thing happens, like we'll
Yeah.
build it. And then it was like, no, this is not happening. So when I realized that, I can't like emphasize enough like how extroverted I've had to make myself be, to like being like, see families walking in the neighborhood and introducing myself, and here's what's your phone number, and like let's get together, and like really taking action to make that happen. Because like we were talking about before, like if you're not taking action to build or grow what's around you and what you want to be around you, then like nothing's gonna happen.
Yeah, the taking the number as an adult, it's like a dating fear, even though
Really.
that's how you get to know someone and ask for their number. Like we were camping last week and Matt met a couple dudes he really liked, the neighboring campsites, and we're packing up to leave. He's like, I should have got their numbers, but like you could see he was nervous, and I was like, just go get their numbers. So he walked over there, and it was cute. I heard him like, hey, can I get your numbers? And then they were like, yeah, well, like call us up when you're in the Central Coast. They made surf dates and all that, and it was so cute. Honey, I'm still on this call. I got a kid here.
I'm still not watching Star too. And I don't like any other things she's watching.
Okay. All right, I'll be out in a few minutes, okay? And I'll solve it. Will you close the door and I'll come out and help you in a few minutes? Okay, find Dad, honey. I'll give it a few seconds so you can delete that out.
So well, I just have a couple of questions just at the end, more on you, of like how like you have been on a journey the past 3 years. Like, how do you take that time for yourself? Like, I know it's so hard to do that, but like, what are your moments of peace?
Yes. Okay. So I am. There's a few different things. And this
Yeah.
is a really simple one that I want to provide as a tip to all moms that I do. And there's many things I do. I do some yoga. I get away for girls' nights. Like I'm pretty good about that stuff. But drink your hot. Let me say this again. Okay. So here's the thing that I do to just have a moment for myself, and it's not a lot of time, and everyone can do it. Drink your coffee hot and alone somewhere in the morning. Like, just do that for yourself. I remember before coming a mom hearing women say things like, oh, I've reheated my coffee 3 times, or I found it cold. And I was like, why? Why? It's not that, like, set one boundary for yourself and be almost a bitch about it. Pardon my French, but it's like when my kids come up to me in the morning and my coffee is warm and they're asking me to get up and get water or this or that, I'm like, I'm drinking my coffee. I go sit out on the bench on the front patio. I'm like, I'm drinking my coffee right now. I'll be with you when I'm done. And like, I'll have my journal out, or sometimes I'm just staring. I'm like, mom drinks her coffee hot. And
Mm,
that's my rule. So that's kind of how I start my day is like, that's a hard, fast rule in my house.
yeah, that's
And
awesome.
then then sometimes I need a minute in the middle of the day. It's like there's not just one thing. It's not a girl's trip. It's like you need three things a day. You need like something in the morning, and then it's like, oh my gosh, take the kids away for even 30 minutes. And then it's something at night sometimes, or it's like, okay, I'm gonna go sneak off because one of my friends is free and we're gonna have a glass of wine. So I don't do as much as I should. So that's why I'm sharing that. But I am fortunate that I have a business right now that does give me a social outlet. So if I had a tasting, I feel like, oh, I got a wine tasting tonight. Bye. Mommy's got to work. And I still feel like I'm getting girlfriend time, even though I'm working. So that's how I take care of me in small ways.
Good. Good. You have it. I'm still trying to get to the point where I can like sneak away and be like, girls' night. I just need to learn by example for you. Like, this is happening. I'm going out. I'm going to do this. Um, because kids will sleep, and it's just nice to kind of have that break where you're like, just no one's crawling on you. And, yeah,
And they're young. Your babies are young, so sometimes it's just really the guilt of getting away and feeling like everything is going to be okay is makes it hard to relax. But
totally.
it will pass. They will grow up.
Not too fast. Not too fast. And my last question I ask everybody, it's a random one, but if you had a button and it just would sit by you all the time and you pressed it and it could do one thing for you, what would it do?
Yeah, it would be like a a calm button, and it would either, I guess this isn't one thing, but I love this question. It's like so many ideas of what this button could do. But I think sometimes we just need a calm reset in the house. Like it's whether it's the motions, like everybody's crazy,
Mhm.
intense, or if I could have it be like it's smart and it decides a house reset physically, like the house is chaotic. So from chaos to calm, is it the humans or is it the like environment that needs a little bit of a reset? That's the button I'd hit. It's not that it's always cleaning or that it's all whatever. It's just like let's put some calm in this house and get some of the crazy out. That's what I'd have it do.
I like that. I like the reset button. Do you know what your button would look like?
I saw it as a big red button because of like the old easy button when you said that, but if I were to design it, I'd probably make it like a blue green color that would look like a piece of art on the wall and I could hit it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just kind of blend in and be
Yeah.
very, and yes. I like that. I'm gonna try to invent that button for later this afternoon.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I feel like we could keep talking and talking and
I
maybe
know.
glasses of wine. But it's so good to see your face too. I missed you.
Yeah, I know. Let's do it again. I
Okay.
want to ask you more questions for my podcast. I'm not actually doing a podcast, but I am doing a newsletter that has audio in it. So
Oh, yes.
we do another interview that I can take from that and use it for that, and you can use it for what you need.
Awesome. And then one last thing, speaking of newsletter, where can people sign up for the newsletter and where else can people find you online?
Yes, so I have my wine page is at wine for good with underscores, wine underscore for underscore good on Instagram. And then I'm on Substack. The Substack page is Behere. And then the website is www.behere.re. So one's wine, one's co-working space. They're all going to be one big thing very soon.
Yeah. And I have to say that Aaron reads the newsletters when they come out and he's always like, Shannon, come here. This is so well written. This is so well written. Comment every time. So
Good. That's
okay,
fine.
awesome. Thank you, Brooke. Thank you for your time.
All right.
And talk later.
Thanks, Shannon.
Bye.
Bye.